السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Peace and Allah's mercy and blessings be upon you. إن شاء الله حنبدأ سلسلة من الفيديوهات لكتب أو كتاب جورنيز اللي هو للصف الرابع. طبعا الكتاب هذا فيه فوق المبتدئ إلى المتوسط، وبيركز على الكلمات المستخدمة أو الشائعة أو اللي تستخدم يوميا. فنظام الكتاب إنه هو كتير فيه قصص، كتير مركز على الكلمات والقواعد أكتر شيء. فحناخد إحنا أول شيء الكلمات تبع القصة، بعدين حنبدأ بالقصة، ومركز على الكلمات الشائعين common words, common used words. عنا الكلمة الأولى comfort. comfort إذا بنسمع كأنه سمعانين بمكان، أيوة صح عليكم، هي جاية comfortable، جاية من كلمة comfort. احنا بنعرف كلمة comfortable اللي هي الصفة اللي هي مرتاح، بنقول this place is comfortable. تمام، فهي هون comfort أساس comfortable. راحة أو هون جاء بمعنى عون، يعني الأصدقاء عون لبعضهم، هم عونا لبعضهم. مثلا they help each other get through hard times، يساندوا بعضهم أو يساعدوا بعضهم للتغلب على الصعوبات أو صعوبات الحياة. فهون comfort جاي بمعنى فعل. بعدين عنا mention. طبعا mention بنسمعها بكل مكان، عمل لي mention، هو منشني. mention يعني يذكر. do not mention one friend's faults to another، لا تذكر أعياب أو عيوب، عفوا عيوب شخص أو مساوئ شخص إلى شخص آخر أو إلى صديق آخر. keep them to yourself instead، خليهم عندك، ما تذكرهم لأحد. بعدين عنا mood. friends remain friends even when one is in a bad mood، يعني الأصدقاء بيضلوا يعني أصدقاء حتى لو كانوا في مزاج سيء أو كانوا معكرين المزاج. بعدين عنا properly هذه جدا مستخدمة، اللي هي هون adverb، حال، يعني تصف فعل. so friends often greet each other properly، بشكل لائق، بيسلموا على بعض بشكل لائق. a handshake is the correct way، يعني أفضل طريقة للتسليم اللي هي باليد أو لما يتصافحوا مع بعض. بعدين عنا intense. يا الله الكلمة شو حلوة، بتدخل بمعنى النية كمان بالمصطلحات الإسلامية. تمام، intense يعني نوت أو يعني كان عندها النية. this girl intends to keep in touch with a friend، يعني هي دائما حاطة ببالها أو دائما عندها النية إنها تكون هون keep in touch، يعني تبقى على تواصل with a friend. she plans to send an email every day، يعني دائما هي مخططة وحاطة ببالها إنه تبعت إيميل كل يوم إلها. consisted هون بمعنى يعني يتكون من أو عبارة عن. so this lively day consisted of، يعني كان هذا اليوم الحيوي مكون من or was made up، أو كان يعني العامل الأساسي اللي فيه bike riding and fresh air، يعني اللي خلاه حيوي اللي هو الخروج إلى الخارج بالدراجة والهواء العليل consisted of. تمام. positive يعني هاي الكلمة اللي كنا نسمعها بوقت كورونا، positive يعني إيجابي. so these friends are positive that they are having a good time. طيب هون اجت بمعنى أو سياق آخر. positive هون متأكد. تمام، these friends are positive يعني متأكدين، يعني they're sure that they are having a good time، إنه هن عم يستمتعوا بوقتهم. طبعا هاي الكلمة معروفة. advanced يعني شخص متطور في مهارة معينة. with his advanced chess skills this man can teach his young friend to play، بمهاراته بتعلم الشطرنج المتطورة أو العالية، هذا الرجل فيه يعلم الولد هذا الصغير كيف يلعب. peculiar يعني مثل weird أو unusual أو غريب. peculiar friends may act in peculiar or unusual ways when taking photos، يعني الأصدقاء لما بيلتقطوا صور بيعملوا شغلات غريبة غير عادية. talent اللي هي الموهبة. These friends share a talent for music. يعني كلهم بيشتركوا بنفس الموهبة واللي هي الموسيقى. This ability gives them hours of fun. يعني طبعا هذا الشيء أو هي الموهبة منحتهم ساعات من المرح. طيب تعالوا ندخل بالقصة. أوكي، يكون Winn-Dixie. Winn-Dixie. So because of Winn-Dixie by Kate. Let's see, or let's check it out. Check out who is Winn-Dixie. مين هي Winn-Dixie؟ طيب 10-year-old Opal is a newcomer in the town of Noemi, Florida. She hasn't made any friends yet and feels a little lonely. Opal's only pal is a very big dog, named after the grocery store where she found him, Winn-Dixie. So القصة بتدور حول بنت اسمها أوبال، هي newcomer يعني زائرة جديدة في البلد اللي اسمها نوامي، فلوريدا، وما عملت أو لم تكون أي أصدقاء إلى الآن، يعني إلى الآن، وتشعر بأنها وحيدة. Opal's only pal، الصديق الوحيد لهي البنت أوبال هو كان كلب كبير جدا، named after the grocery store، سمي يعني على مسمى الجروسري ستور اللي هي السوبر ماركت أو السوبر ماركت أو المكان تبع التسوق تبع شراء الخضار أو محل الخضار. where she found him يعني محل ما وجدوه، هذا كان اسم المحل Winn-Dixie. I spent a lot of time that summer at the Herman W. Block Memorial Library. The Herman W. Block Memorial Library sounds like it would be a big fancy place, but it's not. It's just a little old house full of books, and Miss Franny Block is in charge of them all. She's a very small, very old woman with a short gray hair, and she was the first friend I made in Nawami. It all started with Winn-Dixie not liking it when I went into the library, because he couldn't go inside too, but I showed him how he could stand up on his hand or his hind legs and look in the window and see me in there, selecting my books, and he was okay, as long as he could see me. But the thing was, the first time Miss Franny Block saw Winn-Dixie standing up on his hind legs like that, looking in the window, she didn't think he was a dog. She thought he was a bear. This is what happened. I was picking out my books and kind of humming to myself, and all of a sudden, there was this loud and scary scream. I went running up to the front of the library, and there was Miss Franny Block sitting on the floor behind her desk. "Miss Franny," I said, "are you all right?" "A bear," she said. "A bear?" I asked. He has come back," she said. "He has?" I asked. Where is he?" "Out there," she said, and raised a finger and pointed at Winn-Dixie standing up on his hind legs, looking in the window for me. "Miss Franny Block," I said, "that's not a bear. That's a dog. That's my dog, Winn-Dixie." "Are you positive?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am," I told her. "I'm positive. He's my dog. I would know him anywhere." Miss Franny sat there trembling and shaking. "Come on," I said. "Let me help you. It's okay." I stuck out my hand and Miss Franny took hold of it, and I pulled her up off the floor. She didn't weigh hardly anything at all. Once she was standing on her feet, she started acting all embarrassed, saying how I must think she was a silly old lady mistaking a dog for a bear. But that was she had a bad experience with a bear coming into the Herman W. Block Memorial Library a long time ago, and she never had quite gotten over it. When did that happen? I asked her. Well, said Miss Franny, it's a very long story. That's okay, I told her. I am like my mama in that I like to be told stories. But before you start telling it, can Winn-Dixie come in and listen too? He gets lonely without me. Well, I don't know, said Miss Franny. Dogs are not allowed in the Herman W. Block Memorial Library. He'll be good, I told her. He's a good dog. And before she could say yes or no, I went outside, got Winn-Dixie, and he came in and lay down with a humph and sigh right at Miss Franny's feet. She looked down at him and said, He most certainly is a large dog. Yes, ma'am, I told her. He has a large heart too. Well, Miss Franny said. She bent over and gave Winn-Dixie a pat on the head. And Winn-Dixie wagged his tail back and forth and snuffled his nose on her little old lady feet. Let me get a chair and sit down so I can tell this story properly. Back when Florida was wild, when it consisted of nothing but palmetto trees and mosquitoes so big they could fly away with you, Miss Franny Block started in. And I was just a little girl, no bigger than you. My father, Herman W. Block, told me that I could have anything I wanted for my birthday, anything at all. Miss Franny looked around the library. She leaned in close to me. I don't want to appear prideful, she said, but my daddy was very rich man. A very rich man, she nodded, and then leaned back and said, and I was a little girl who loved to read. So I told him, I said, Daddy, I would most certainly love to have a library for my birthday. A small little library would be wonderful. You asked for a whole library? A small one, Miss Franny nodded. I wanted a little house full of nothing but books, and I wanted to share them too. And I got my wish. My father built me this house, the very one we are sitting in now. And at a very young age, I became a librarian. Yes, ma'am. What about that bear? I said. Did I mention that Florida was wild in those days? Miss Franny Block said. Oh, yeah, you did. It was wild. There were wild men and wild women and wild animals. Like bears? Yes, ma'am. That's right. Now, I have to tell you, I was a little Miss Know-it-all. I was a Miss Smarty Pants with my library full of books. Oh, yes, ma'am. I thought I knew the answers to everything. Well, one hot Thursday, I was sitting in my library with all the doors and windows open, and my nose stuck in a book, when a shadow crossed the desk. And without looking up, yes, ma'am, without even looking up, I said, Is there a book I can help you find? Well, there was no answer, and I thought it might have been a wild man or a wild woman, scared of all these books and afraid to speak up. But then I became aware of a very peculiar smell, a very strong smell. I raised my eyes slowly, and standing right in front of me was a bear. Yes, ma'am, a very large bear. How big? I asked. Oh, well, said Miss Franny, perhaps 3 times the size of your dog. Then what happened? I asked her. Well, said Miss Franny, I looked at him and he looked at me. He put his big nose up in the air and sniffed as if he was trying to decide if a little Miss Know-it-all, all librarian, was what he was in the mood to eat. And I sat there, and then I thought, well, if this bear intends to eat me, I'm not going to let this happen without a fight. No, ma'am. So very slowly and very carefully, I raised up the book I was reading. What book was that? I asked. Why, it was War and Peace. A very large book. I raised it up slowly, and then I aimed it carefully, and I threw it right at that bear and screamed, "Begone!" And do you know what? No, ma'am, I said. He went. But this is what I will never forget. He took the book with him? Nuh-uh, I said. Yes, ma'am, said Miss Franny. He snatched it up and ran. Did he come back? I asked. No, I never saw him again. Well, the men in the town used to tease me about it. They used to say, Miss Franny, we saw that bear of yours out in the woods today. He was reading that book, and he said it sure was a good and would be all right if he kept it for just another week. Yes, ma'am, they did tease me about it. She sighed. I imagine I am the only one left from those days. I imagine I am the only one that even recalls that bear. All my friends, everyone I knew when I was young, they are all dead and gone. She sighed again. She looked sad and old and wrinkled. It was the same way I felt sometimes. Being friendless in a new town and not having a mama to comfort me, I sighed too. Being friendless in a new town and not having a mama to comfort me, I sighed too. Winn-Dixie raised his head off his paws and looked back and forth between me and Miss Franny. He sat up then and showed Miss Franny his teeth. Well, now, look at that, she said. That dog is smiling at me. It's a talent of his, I told her. It's a fine talent, Miss Franny said. A very fine talent. And she smiled back at Winn-Dixie. We could be friends, I said to Miss Franny. I mean, you and me and Winn-Dixie. We could be all friends. We could all be friends. Miss Franny smiled even bigger. Why, that would be grand, she said. Just grand. And right at that minute, right when the three of us had decided to be friends, who should come marching into the Herman W. Block Memorial Library but old pinch-faced Amanda Wilkinson. She walked right up to Miss Franny's desk and said, I finished Johnny Turman and I enjoyed it very much. I would like something even more difficult to read now because I am an advanced reader. Yes, dear, I know, said Miss Franny. She got up out of her chair. Amanda pretended like I wasn't there. She stared right past me. Are dogs allowed in the library? She asked Miss Franny as they walked away. Certain ones, said Miss Franny. A select few. And then she turned around and winked at me. I smiled back. I had just made my first friend in Nawami, and nobody was going to mess that up for me. Not even old pinched-faced Amanda Wilkinson.